Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News of this Tuesday, the second day of December, 2025. And we have three important stories that are in the news this hour. One that emphasizes the danger that our world finds itself in, as well as two very thought-provoking stories about our future. So let's get to them. First of all, from Newsmax, our first headline, Vladimir Putin says, if Europe wants war, then Russia is ready. Those are not good words. Also, from the Times of Israel, an editor's flawed human ramblings on AI, journalism, and the disappearance of truth. That last line, the disappearance of truth, is huge, and we'll talk about it. And finally, from CNBC, MIT study finds AI can replace 11.7 of the U.S. workforce right now, and it will get to be a lot more in the future. All right, let's look at these headlines. First of all, Putin says if Europe wants war, then Russia is ready. This is from Newsmax. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that Russia did not want a war with European powers, but if Europe did want a war, then Russia was ready to fight right now. He said European powers were making demands on a possible peace settlement for Ukraine that Moscow considers absolutely unacceptable. Putin accused Ukraine's European allies Tuesday of sabotaging U.S.-led efforts to end the war that have gained momentum in recent weeks. They don't have a peace agenda. They're on the side of war, Putin said after speaking to an investment forum and before he held talks with a U.S. delegation led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner at the Kremlin. The Russian leader accused Europe of amending peace proposals with demands that are absolutely unacceptable to Russia, thus blocking the entire peace process, only to blame Russia for it. That's their goal, Putin said. His remarks were in line with the narrative that Russia pushed forward after Trump returned to the White House this year and initiated talks with Moscow, painting Europe's staunch support of Ukraine as one of the main hurdles on the path to peace. Witkoff and Kushner were due to meet with Putin today in Moscow, talking to the Kremlin an embryonic peace plan, giving an embryonic peace plan that Washington hopes can end the nearly 4-year war in Ukraine. Coinciding with Witkoff's trip, Ukrainian President Zelensky went to Ireland, continuing his visits to European countries that have helped sustain his country's fight against Russian invasion. In what could be a high-stakes day of negotiations, Zelensky said he was expecting swift reports later in the day from the U.S. envoys in Moscow on whether talks could move forward after Trump's initial 28-point plan was whittled down to 20 in Sunday's talks between the U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Florida. This is a very important story. We will keep you posted on this. Obviously, it's a developing story, and when we know something, you'll know something. All right. Next two stories are fascinating because they have a lot to do with AI, the future, and where the world is going. Headline number two, an editor's flawed human ramblings on AI, journalism, and the disappearance of truth. We are at risk of losing our capacity to establish the facts on what is unfolding around us, and pretty soon we may give up trying. That's quite a statement. This is David Horowitz, by the way. He's an Israeli journalist. He's a leftist, but he's very well respected in Israel, and many of his stories are pretty good. Anyway, about a year ago, he says two very smart young men gave a presentation to our staff about how we could utilize rapidly improving AI technology to choose and write our stories. The way I understood what they were saying, they had developed a process for scanning the internet, assessing the most important stories in the global news cycle, synthesizing the content that other outlets and writers had published on those stories, and thus enabling their media clients to quickly and cheaply produce their own quote unquote versions based upon what was already published content elsewhere. An editor could tailor the product to meet his or her media outlet's needs, including its particular style, gravitas, political orientation, and more. I stress again that this is what I understood them to be offering, and they indicated that they had a growing roster of satisfied clients. It was an informative presentation, not a hard sell, and we have not spoken since. But I may have got it, but I may have it a little wrong. I was so awed and horrified by what they were saying that my mind immediately jumped to what I saw as the devastating implications of technology, such as this for journalism, democracy, and, well, truth. And that concern has only intensified in the year since. The objection I raised loudest during our conversation was that their technology, and agreed, and indeed any AI technology put to this use, would be cannibalizing the firsthand reported and written material on the internet. Any and every profit-driven media owner, or at least the many who would ultimately prioritize profit over reliable content would be able to fill their publications, websites, and social media platforms with apparently credible material tailored to its own readership without having to employ a staff of capable reporters and editors to actually go out and see things and write about and talk about or film them. Then he asked the question, why does any of this matter? You might reasonably ask. AI is an incredible tool, and if in journalism and scholarship and arguably most every field beyond, it can enable greater speed, dexterity, coherence, and success, and maybe accuracy, surely that's a good thing. And he says, and maybe it is. Except it doesn't it risk gradually shrinking humanity's skill set, rigor, individuality, and concern for truth? It certainly does. Now, there's so much here to ponder on this story. We've talked about this before, and obviously we're going to talk about this again, especially the phrase he uses in the title, the disappearance of truth. This trend of lack of serious investigative reporting, while mainly relying on AI, perfectly fits side 15 of our 25 sides. We're near the end. There will be an exponential increase in technology. And again, that book is a free download from our website, Educating Our World, on our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy, 25 Signs. We're near the end. Scripture supernaturally predicted a world that only now exists. In other words, to literally fulfill what was predicted, it assumed certain technologies that certainly did not exist at that time and only have now begun to exist in recent years. In particular, there will be the ability of the final Antichrist to make pronouncements that will affect the entire world. To be able to do so, the technology must exist to allow him to reach everyone on the planet in real time. And we've already talked about this technology becoming a reality many times here on this program. Along this same line, once the great majority of the people are trained to use AI for answers, it will be much easier for those in power to control the populace with the agenda that they want to promote. In short, they could make certain that the information people received on basically any issue was subject to their control, since individual reporting would be a thing of the past. Simply put, there will be a disappearance of truth, which would make it easier to believe the lies of the final Antichrist. And our next story only adds fuel to the fire. Headline number 3, MIT study finds AI can already replace 11.7% of U.S. workforce. This is from CNBC. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology released a study that found that artificial intelligence can already replace 11.7% of the U.S. labor market. The study was conducted using a labor simulation tool called the Iceberg Index, which is created by MIT and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. For lawmakers preparing billion-dollar reskilling and training investments, the index offers a detailed map of where disruption is forming down to the zip code. Massachusetts Institute of Technology released a study that found that AI, artificial intelligence, can already replace about 11.7% of the U.S. labor market, or as much as get this, $1.2 trillion in wages across finance, healthcare, and professional services. The study was conducted using a labor simulation tool called the Iceberg Index. It was created by MIT, and it simulates how 151 million U.S. workers interact across the country and how they are affected by AI and corresponding policy. The Iceberg Index, which was announced earlier this year, offers a forward-looking view of how AI may reshape the labor market, not just in coastal tech hubs, but across every state in the country. For lawmakers preparing billion-dollar reskilling and training investments, the index offers a detailed map of where disruption is forming down to the zip code. Now, this piggybacks on our previous story. The exponential rise in technology, again, side 15 of our 25s are near the end, 25 sides are near the end, will have a profound effect on everyone, whether it be what jobs are available, as well as what information is received. The operative word here is control. This is precisely what we see Scripture predicting about this coming man of sin, the final Antichrist. And for more information on this personage, please see our book, The Final Antichrist, The Coming Caesar. Again, it's a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. It's a very thorough book on the subject, and I know you really, really enjoy it. All right, here's the bottom line. It continues to amaze us how so many stories from so many different topics all confirm the trends that we see in our world, trends that fit the biblical scenario of the last days. Like we say here all the time, We're always amazed, but never surprised, because God has told us ahead of time these things are going to happen, and the trends we see are setting the stage for fulfilling exactly what the scripture predicts will take place in the last days. So we're here every day to tell you that. And thank the Lord, He's let us know these things ahead of time. As Jesus said in John 16 to His disciples on the night of His betrayal, I've told you these things ahead of time. So when they do take place, you will believe. And we certainly do believe the Lord is in control. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.